Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the District Planning Committee meeting. My name is Councillor Sheikh Ullah. Before we go into the agenda, I just want to introduce Kirsty Nichols, who's the Team Leader Development Management, and she'll be leading this committee, hopefully going forward. So welcome to the meeting, Kirsty.
Thank you.
Okay, then item number 1, membership of the committee.
Yeah, apologies from Councillor McGrath. He may get here, but he's got other things at the moment.
No problem, thank you. Councillor Sully-Richards.
Yep, thank you. Sully-Richards, Newsom Ward.
Yeah, have you got any other apology from other two members? No.
No, I've not.
Should be recorded absent.
No other apologies received, Chair.
Yeah, so it must be recorded as absent. And
Thanks. Okay, cool. Item number 2 then, minutes of the previous meeting. Do we agree that this is an accurate record? Those of us that were here. So it's moved by Council. Item number 3, declarations of interest and lobbying.
none, Chair.
Non-chair.
No, non-chair, sorry.
Item number 4, admission of the public. This is a meeting held in public. We don't have any items that would require us to go into a private session. Thank you. Item number 5, public question time.
No questions, Chair.
Thank you. Item number 6, deputations and petitions.
No deputations or petitions.
Thank you. Item number 7 is the site visit, and I can confirm that we've been on one site visit this morning. And we've got the first item, which is the PROW item, definitive map modification order. Thank you, Mark.
Yep, thank you, Chair. I'll just share my screen. Hello everyone, my name is Matt Drydale and I'm a Definitive Map Officer at Kirklees Council. My remit is to continuously review the Definitive Mapping Statement, which is the legal record of public rights-of-way held under Section 53 of the Wildlife and Countryside Act 1981. Another remit includes the investigation of formal applications for Definitive Map Modification Orders submitted under Section 53(5) of the Wildlife and Countryside Act. The item before the committee is not a plan application and concerns the determination of an application received in 2018 for a definitive map modification order to add a public footpath to the definitive mapping statement leading between Old Lane to Taylor Lane via the burial ground at Scapegoat Hill, known as Route 1. The application was prompted by a planning permission approved on appeal on the 24th of November 2017. The applicant also provided an annotated map that depicts the old footpaths used by villagers in years gone by to access Goldcar for work. Corroboratively, upon investigation, the user evidence forms, officers discovered evidence for 2 other routes not claimed in the application, all recorded on the definitive mapping statement. These are known as Route 2, which leads between Old Lane to High Street via steps, and Route 3, which leads from Old Lane to High Street via Fairmont Close. The agenda item is therefore also with regards to determining whether or not to make a definitive map modification order in relation to these routes. So Route 1 is shown in pink, leading between A to B to C. Route 2 is just highlighted in yellow from B to D, and Route 3 from E to F highlighted in blue. Route 1 led between old dry stone brick walls along a wide grassed surface lane, and also led through the Baptist burial grounds down to Taylor Lane through a gate at the very southern end. Route 2 led up a series of steps and joined High Street. Route 3 was alleged to lead through this gate onto Vermont Close. In this case, the event that is most relevant to the agenda item is specified in Section 53CI of the Wildlife and Countryside Act, and it is the discovery by the authority of evidence which, when considered with all other relevant evidence available to them, shows that a right-of-way which is not shown in the mapping statement subsists or is reasonably alleged to subsist over land in the area to which the map relates, being a right-of-way such that the land over which the right subsists is a public path. Accordingly, members must determine the agenda item according to the following test. Is it reasonable to allege that a right-of-way subsists? If there is a conflict of credible evidence, but no incontrovertible evidence that a way cannot be reasonably alleged to subsist, members should find that a public right-of-way has been reasonably alleged to subsist. The application gave as evidence 22 user evidence statement forms. The relevant statutory provision in relation to the dedication of a public right-of-way is found in Section 31 of the Highways Act 1980. If Section 31 is inapplicable, the question of dedication must also be examined in the context of common law. The application also gave various pieces of evidence, documentary evidence. As a result, Section 32 of the 1980 Act is also applicable. The documentary evidence is analysed in detail in Appendix B under the heading Documentary Evidence Evaluation. Whilst the documentary evidence is of assistance in various ways, including establishing when various parts of routes 1, 2 and 3 physically existed, in isolation it is not considered sufficient to show that routes subsist or are reasonably alleged to subsist as public footpaths. It was therefore necessary for officers to examine the evidence of use and dedication under Section 31 of the 1980 Act or at common law. The user evidence is analysed in Appendix B under the heading User Evidence Evaluation. The public right to use routes 1 and 2 was brought into question by approved planning permission in November 2017. The relevant 20-year period is therefore November 1997 to November 2017. Evidence of continuous public use on foot for Route 1 is provided by 23 witnesses on a daily to weekly frequency. Evidence of continuous public use on foot for Route 2 is provided by 16 witnesses on a mainly weekly frequency. The quality and quantity of user evidence for both routes is sufficient to show actual enjoyment by the public, and such use was as of right, i.e. that's without force, without secrecy and without permission. A section of the routes from Old Lane to the burial ground was used for funeral events, which an agent stated this resulted in public use being neither consistent, continuous, nor available. However, there is no evidence from the user evidence forms that witnesses found their actual use and enjoyment of the routes physically interrupted by the owners. Reasonably accepting the user evidence and reasonably accepting the contrary evidence, a reasonable person would find that the ways have been actually used and enjoyed by the public, as of right and without interruption for the full period of 20 years, and are therefore deemed to be dedicated as public footpaths. The presumptions are not rebutted by incontrovertible evidence which shows that the owners negated the intention to dedicate the way as a public footpath. The public right to use Route 3 was brought into question by a locked gate in 2010 and 2015. Two overlapping relevant 20-year periods have therefore been considered under Section 31 of the 1980 Act. These are 1990 to 2010 and 1995 to 2015. 11 users indicated knowledge or use of Route 3, but only 5 witnesses indicated that they used the way during the relevant periods. However, one person only used the way to visit a family farm, which may be a private right. One user had done the route since 1980 but did not indicate a start date for their use. And lastly, one user only walked the way once. The quality and quantity of public use is therefore not sufficient to represent actual use and enjoyment by the public under Section 31 of the 1980 Act. The question of dedication was also examined in the context of common law. There is some evidence of reputation from landowners, residents and users that part of Route 3 is an old footpath. However, as similarly determined under statute, the evidence of public use is currently insufficient to win fair an intention to dedicate Route 3 by the landowner and acceptance by the public at common law. Therefore, officers do not consider that Route 3 is reasonably alleged to subsist. After considering the evidence and the relevant criteria, members have three options. The first option is for the council to make an order to modify the definitive mapping statement based on the officer's recommendation. The second option is for the council to make an order to modify the definitive mapping statement based on members' interpretation of the evidence. The third option is for members to decide not to make an order to which the application relates for Route 1 and also the discovered Route 2. The likelihood or otherwise of any order attracting opposition should form no part of the decision. In addition, factors such as suitability, desirability, safety, maintenance, privacy, or whether the routes are currently obstructed by development are other matters that cannot be taken into consideration under Section 53 of the Wildlife and Countryside Act. Should the committee choose options 1 or 2, members are also requested to consider the council's stance regarding confirmation of any opposed order. It may actively support confirmation of its own order or alternatively take a neutral stance. The officer's recommendation is that officers are authorised to make a definitive map modification order under Section 53CI of the Wildlife and Countryside Act 1981 to add 2 public footpaths with variable widths as shown on the updated indicative map. A public footpath leading from Old Lane to Taylor Lane via the burial ground subject to the limitation of a gate, and a public footpath leading from Old Lane to High Street via steps. The recommendation is also that the council confirm any order if unopposed. If an order is made and objections are received and not withdrawn, and the matter referred to the Planning Inspectorate for determination, the council actively support confirmation of the order at any public inquiry or hearing. And this is the plan of the updated indicative map. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. So I think the first speaker, thanks Mark for your presentation, first speaker, Claire Atkinson. Welcome to the meeting. You have 3 minutes to present.
Good afternoon. My name is Claire Atkinson and I live with my family, that's my husband and 2 young sons, at number 6 Old Lane, which is the house and garden affected by Route 1 of this application. Route 1 is the route that goes up and down the graveyard steps and through what is now our front garden and driveway. Please forgive me if I sound emotional, but I need to convey the profound effect that your decision today could have on me and my family. I just want to point out something first. We are not the developers. We are the family who bought this house to bring up our children and become part of the Scapegoat Hill community. This application for a footpath was made back in 2018 when the houses were not built. We bought the house in late 23 on the open market. That's 5 years after this footpath application. We have become aware that this application for a footpath was apparently made in an attempt to try and scupper the development that has resulted. We have learned that it was the church that sold the land to the developer in order to pay for the church's upkeep. However, we obviously had nothing to do with any of that. We also understand that the applicant actually lives in Wales now, so they likely have no interest in this. We were devastated to receive the council's letter earlier this month. Imagine you have worked so hard to buy your dream home with aspirations of growing old and bringing up your family there. Then you have the prospect of an up to 5 metre wide public footpath through your main garden and driveway. That would make our garden and driveway virtually unusable. Our football mad boys won't be able to put their goals up and play. And apart from that, there are clear issues of security because presumably we would have to leave our driveway gate permanently open. How do you think that is going to affect the enjoyment of living there? Most worryingly, it means anybody is able to walk straight past the front of our house through our garden and driveway at any time, even in the middle of the night. This is what we are facing. These are real human consequences of your decision today. The development, which we had nothing to do with, has happened. A family, my family, lives there now. I would like the applicant to realise that they are not hurting the church here, they are not hurting the developer here, they are hurting a family that has had nothing to do with any of this and just wants to be part of the same community. Please, committee, I beg you not to make the order in relation to Route 1, as the officers have reported it. The effect on my family will be utterly devastating, and you have the power to do something about that today. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Mr. Paul Hobson. Good afternoon, Mr. Hobson. Welcome to the meeting.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I've been appointed Church Graveyard Secretary about 4 years ago. I would like to make a couple of points for your consideration. Firstly, we have concerns regarding the recommendation to make a public right-of-way through the graveyard. The graveyard steps were never intended to form a thoroughfare, and to suggest that they were could be seen as misguided and actually disrespectful. Never were, never are, and never should be. Who better to know the history and management of the church graveyard than the church people? The steps were built for the development, maintenance and access to the graveyard only. No one I have spoken to has ever seen anyone using the graveyard as a walkway. Figures 18 and 25 in the report clearly show the graveyard steps do not even join up with Route 3, and there are no maps showing it to be a public thoroughfare. In fact, at the top of the second parcel of land, which never had any graves in it, and is the land that was sold to the developer, this had a snicket for those walking down to Goka, page 96. The very existence of this snicket just past the graveyard negates the suggestion that the steps through the graveyard would ever have been used to walk through en route to Goka from Vermont Close. We need to emphasise that the main thoroughfare was from the east of Scapegoat Hill along the track through Vermont Close to Old Lane and down to Goka. Secondly, now that it is being recommended not to reopen the original track from Old Lane via Vermont Close to the east of Scape, but to stop it just past the graveyard, it really does question any purpose or reason to reroute it down through the graveyard. So walk with me. If we were going from High Street down to Goka, we would go down the top steps from High Street onto Old Lane, which has now been made wider with a footpath. We'd go down that, across Taylor Lane and on our way to Goka. Previously, admittedly for work purposes, more now likely for leisurely walks. Basically, a nice, straight, safe route. Why on earth, then, would you on this journey go down the steps from High Street onto Old Lane, then decide to take a sharp left through someone's private garden, out the other end, then down the graveyard with its steep incline onto a narrow part of a busy road with no pavement, to walk a short distance down that road back to the bottom of Old Lane, cross over to rejoin your journey to Goka? A complete unnecessary detour through a private garden and then through a consecrated graveyard, disturbing both the living and the dead. We talk about win-win situations, but this is a loss situation. We all understand the upset and anguish that this development has caused.
Mr. Hobson,
but sorry,
thank
just
you very much.
two lines,
Unfortunately
please.
not, because it's been 3 minutes.
But please,
Mr.
could you
Hobson.
just one word? Please just end this nonsense to reject this proposal. I just ask for common sense. Sorry, thank you.
Mr. Hobson, when the time has been called, the time has been called. Everyone gets a certain allocated time. Okay, over to members of the committee. Mark, I will bring you in shortly because there's a couple of bits of clarity that I need. So, Councillor Bellamy first.
Thank you, Chair. Quite an interesting one, this, for me, because I actually lived in Scape. Guaranteed, it's probably about 45 years ago. And I must admit, actually, I never ever remember using the graveyard as a footpath. We'd go down Grandstand to get to Taylor Hill. So that makes it quite interesting. And I mean, obviously, I represented Combe Valley Ward a few years ago, not that I do now. And I still don't ever remember using down that way and through the graveyard. So I'm not sure where this has come from. Was it something that was done just before they built them houses down at the bottom? Because like I say, I'd have always just gone down Grandstand because it's a lot easier to get down there than it is to start cutting through the graveyard. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bellamy. Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's very important that we get this right because of the impact, if we don't, on this young lady and her family, will severe going forward. That's why I want to move deferral, because I want to go walking and have a look at myself, and I feel it's only right the committee should do so as well.
Thank you, Councillor Firth. So there is a proposal on the table for deferral. Mark? So it's been moved and seconded for a deferral. Mark?
Yeah, I'd be happy with that, if we can go walk the route, yeah.
Okay then. So it has been moved and seconded for a deferral with a site visit. I think that's what Eric is saying, isn't it? So I think we move
Is
to the
that
vote.
correct? Yeah. So you're voting on deferral to allow the committee to make a site visit and walk the route.
Yeah.
Councillor Sokol?
For.
Councillor Firth?
Oh,
Councillor Bellamy?
For.
Councillor Davies? Councillor Lee Richards? Councillor Uller?
4.
That's agreed, unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, then the next item is planning application for the erection of 2 dwellings, land adjacent to 155 Longwood Road, page 105. Right, John, we're going to make a start. Mohan, where about? You should not. I think we'll make a start, John. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. My name's John Holmes and I'm presenting this application for 2 dwellings which members have been asked to consider. The application is brought to the Planning Committee due to the number of representations received. This drawing shows the layout of both dwellings that face onto Longwood Road, and Longwood Road runs to the top part of this drawing with access taken in the centre of the site here. This drawing shows the floor plan of plot 1, and this shows the elevations for plot 1. This drawing shows the floor plan for plot 2, and this would be the elevations for that plot. If I just go back to the site plan, that shows the layout for plots 1 and 2. So this photograph is taken from Longwood Road, and this photograph's taken from within the site. And this is an aerial image which shows the location of the site in the wider context of the locality. So the site is unallocated in the Kirklees local plan and would see development for 2 dwellings. As set out in the committee report, the principle of development is considered to be acceptable. 14 objections, one of which included a petition with 37 signatures, have been received. The matters raised in objection are summarised and addressed in the committee report. The proposed development is considered to have an acceptable visual impact, subject to conditions relating to materials of construction, boundary treatments and finished floor levels. The impact of the proposal upon the amenity of future occupiers of the development, as well as that of existing neighbouring occupiers, is considered acceptable, subject to condition restricting the finished floor levels of the development. As set out in the report, subject to inclusion of conditions requiring the surfacing of and provision of off-street parking areas and submission of a scheme to ensure adequate highway structures are in place to ensure land stability, the development is considered acceptable having regard to highways issues. Conditions are recommended to secure biodiversity gains on the site, and with regard to other matters relating to the site, conditions requiring submission of details relating to land quality are also recommended. It is therefore considered that, subject to condition, the development is acceptable, and for the reasons set out in the committee report, it's recommended that this application be approved. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, John. So we have one speaker, David Irving. Welcome to the meeting, David. You have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is David Irving, and I would just like to share my comments in support of the planning application 2024/90881, erection of 2 detached dwellings. The land in question is currently derelict and has been used for rubbish burning, dumping of cars, fridges and other household waste. Weed trees are currently overgrowing the site. Having built a pair of semi-detached houses just 2 doors down at numbers 133 and 135 Longwood Road on a very similar plot, one of which I moved into on completion, I can see only positives in developing this derelict and neglected eyesore in what is a very nice residential area. The properties will be identical in design to 133 and 135, built of natural stone. The only major difference is the fact that there will be detached properties and not semi-detached. A traffic and parking study carried out by EC49 Limited, reference document number EC49-24-19-E-01, had been submitted to the planning officer as requested, which should negate any issues relating to access and parking. Thank you for all your time.
Thank you. So it's over to the committee then. Councillor Eric Firth and then Councillor Sokol.
Thank you, Chair. As you're well aware that we all went on a site visit this morning, and I do agree that this site is right for development. It wants cleaning up. The only concern I've got is the back of the property, and there are some very large trees. And I can't see anything about those being retained or managed, and I'd like to see, if possible, those large trees. I know there's some little ones that we can do without, but there's some large trees at the back. And I think that may well have an impact on the stability from not the site itself, but the site drops down behind that quite sharply. And I think that those trees, the retention of the trees, will help the stability of that land behind. Correct me, you may correct me if I'm wrong, officers, because I'm no planning expert, but that's my way of thinking. And by the way, I do support the development.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Firth. Councillor Sokol.
Thank you, Chair. I've been on the site visit with all of you. I've seen this. I've never seen a piece of land like this, left like this, the rubbish burning and other stuff dumping over there. And even those bushes are not maintained by any landowner. I don't know why there are objections from the neighboring property. It will improve the area, and the two houses there, and with two each parking spaces, there will be no on-street parking. Well, I would like to put some condition. Whoever move in the two properties should not park on the road, though they must park on their spaces they provided. Yeah. So I second Eric.
Did Councillor Firth formally move? Yes. Okay, so it's been formally moved and seconded by Councillor Sokol. That's for the application, the recommendation, officer's recommendation. Councillor Bellamy next.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. To be honest, I couldn't vote for it if they hadn't. I think whatever they do there, it's got to be an improvement to the streets. See, to be honest, it doesn't look good from the road at all at the moment. And I actually think it's probably just infill. There's not any other particular gaps down that road. And if there is, they don't quite look as messy as that. So, yeah, I'm happy to support this with the officer's conditions.
Thank you, Councillor Bellamy. John, can we just have some clarity on the...
I can come back.
Kirsty?
Yes,
Kirsty, yep.
Thank you, through your Chair. Kirsty Nichols, Area Team Leader. So to go back on the trees comment, it's been assessed by the Council's tree officer, and whilst they are of mature growth, shall we say, where the houses are positioned, it's not significant enough to affect the root preservation orders and root protection areas, and those trees are not covered by any protection or conservation area control. So I don't know whether that appeases your concerns, that there won't be any impact in terms of the root protection areas and those trees.
We're in the fortunate position, through you, Chair, of having the development. We're having the fortunate position of having the chap that's going to... can I ask, through you, his intent regarding those trees?
We can certainly, I'm not sure but we can certainly have that information. But for us as planning officers, it's been assessed by the tree officer, and they find no issues with the build form in front of those trees.
May I ask him, Chair? What's your intention with those trees at the back, those big ones?
In relation to the trees at the rear of the plot, I'm actually going to be the builder that's building these properties. The trees are not going to be removed. They will be pruned and tidied up, trimmed, probably topped off a little bit. But I've no immediate plans whatsoever. Even though the weed trees, I've no immediate plans whatsoever to actually remove all those trees, because I believe that it forms a good barrier to the rear of the development, and also, as you spoke of previously, it stabilises that area of land where it drops down onto the public footpath. So yeah, as you say, I've got no plans to do anything with those other than trim and prune.
I think you've made it clear. Thank you. So I think it's been moved and seconded by...
There was another comment about the highways.
I think there were highways. I think I was going to ask that as well. Ryan, just going back to what Councillor Sokol said about the highways and the parking, there were two sites that this was in between. Now, the parking that was on those sites that were side by side, are we saying that the parking is going to mirror something like that on this site? Thank you.
Through you, Chair. Excuse me. As was seen on the site visit, the development that was the bottom side of the existing terrace dwellings provides 2 spaces for those semi-detached houses that are on site currently. This proposal is a mirror of that, so it's considered acceptable from a highways perspective. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Firth.
Before you wrap this one up, Chair, even though the developer has said there is no intention of removing those trees because of it would affect the stability of the land going down, I think we need to find a way of conditioning that, because in the future he may not live there, he might sell them on. Somebody might have chopped the trees down, and it will affect the stability of that land going down, and I think we need to write that in somehow.
Not sure how to use the equipment.
Yeah.
There we go.
I've attended many. This is the first committee I've attended for Kirklees, and I've seen many instances where planning authorities have attached a condition first to protect the trees during development, and require a scheme for their ongoing retention and maintenance. Of course, the best protection for trees is a tree preservation order. It would be a matter for the authority whether they wanted to make such a thing. But I have seen conditions attached to planning permissions on many occasions requiring a scheme for the retention and preservation of the trees on a development site. And you may also want a condition requiring the trees protected during development as well.
Thank you. Kirsty.
Can I come back, Chair? Going down to the tree protection order, I think it's perhaps unnecessary and excessively bureaucratic, because the developer has indicated that's his intent, but the developer might not be here forever, and the owners of the property may well decide to fell them. Can we just write it in there? It would be best somehow if those trees, you see, if you get a protection order, the bureaucracy involved in actually trimming them, lopping them, it's a nightmare, absolute nightmare. So we need to find a way of retaining those trees, that they're looked after and not felled, because in 20 years' time somebody might rock up, fell them, and everything falls down the hill.
Yeah, I just think, sorry, Kirsty, before you just jump in, I just think that we can only assess what we've got in front of us, and trying to premeditate what's going to happen further on. I mean, from my understanding, Kirsty, is that there isn't any protection order, but feel free to.
That's the difficulty. So if you're adding a condition on, there has to be a reason, and it has to meet the tests of why a condition is put on in terms of necessary, reasonable, appropriate, etc. Council's trees officer has come back and hasn't suggested, they've not objected and haven't actually suggested any necessary conditions, and also have made the point that their amenity value is not to such a degree that would warrant a tree preservation order. So we just have to be really careful in terms of any conditions that we're putting on, that you would be satisfied that they would meet the test.
Yeah, Chair, I don't want to put a preservation order, it's unnecessary.
But it's just the condition would have to meet the test. So if that's where you'll need to, as a committee, decide.
Is there any further comments from anybody?
Councillor Circle suggested a condition about not being able to park on the highway. I think Ryan can come back.
Yeah, Ryan.
Through you, Chair. Regarding the condition about parking to the property frontage, to progress that, it would require a separate legal process to pursue a TRO, which isn't guaranteed in this instance. In addition, that may push any visitor parking to these properties further up the road outside other dwellings, so we won't consider that appropriate at this location. If that's okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Sooley-Richards.
Sorry, I think you mentioned it on site and I can't remember the answer. Was the property to the left of the site where there were windows adjacent to that sort of access route, they would not be affected by this development, would they, in terms of light or overlooking or?
Yeah. So from a site visit, it's in the committee report, it's been viewed that these are non-habitable rooms, as we would call them in planning terms, so it doesn't have the same amenity value as, say, a habitable room. It was also found from the tenant that was there that it's for cellar purposes and storage purposes. So in terms of those windows, they're non-habitable, and it would be a blank gable wall that's on the side and therefore wouldn't have any impact.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions from anybody, any further concerns? So I understand it's been moved by Councillor Firth, seconded by Councillor Sokol, to approve the officer's recommendation. So, yeah, we'll go to the vote.
So you're voting on delegating approval to the Head of Planning and Development, subject to completing the list of conditions, including the 13 conditions set out in the officer's report. Councillor Sokol?
For.
Councillor Firth?
For.
Councillor Bellamy?
For.
Councillor Davies?
For.
Councillor Lee Richards?
For.
Councillor Uller?
For.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you, everybody. That brings us to the end of our meeting.